Smith, and this is Bradley Kendall, and this is After Further Review, Tiger Vision's college football weekly rundown show. Bradley, week 3's in the books, so after further review.
U of L's. A lot of L's coming out of Louisville this weekend. Papa John's, they had the blackout against Clemson and looking to really rebound after last year's loss, and it was not to be. Clemson with the 47-21 victory over Louisville. Lots of talk been around campus. Clemson rises to number 2 in the AP poll rankings.
Yeah.
Louisville definitely free falls after that, but a lot of interesting storylines from this past week in football and a lot going forward. It's getting really interesting. We're starting to really figure things out.
It is. I feel like there's a lot of clarity has been brought to college football in the last week worth of games when we had huge games like Mississippi State, LSU. You had games like Texas and USC. I mean, a lot of good games and, a lot to talk about. Jumping right in, though, USC-Texas, a double overtime game that arguably shouldn't even have gotten to overtime. But USC came out on top, 27-24. What were some key takeaways from that game?
It was going to be a hyped up game, obviously because of the brand names USC versus Texas. After the championship game back in 2005, a lot to live up to off of that. Texas kind of a surprise game. USC was at home. You really figure that it was the Texas team that lost 51-41 to Maryland was probably going to show up, and USC was going to run away with it. But kind of a moral victory for Tom Herman after starting off 1-1. People already claiming he's not the guy for Texas. USC comes out strong, and Texas battles back and really lost it at the very end. They really had a chance to win it.
Yeah, I feel like if this game had been at home for Texas, I think they would have been able to get it done. I mean, obviously, to go on the road in a hostile environment like USC, a game with so much buildup after their last meeting in 2004 or 2005 for the national championship. It was really hyped up all week. It lived up to and exceeded all expectations. Really impressed, though, with Texas going on the road and hanging their own against USC. Obviously, you could argue that USC didn't play their best, especially at home.
They still haven't played their best yet.
No.
For, 3 games
and
now.
Darnold has some questions to answer. But, yeah, I mean, it just, again, a great game, I think, so far the game of the year.
I think the real storyline of the game was the walk-on freshman kicker saving basically USC's season because you take an L to Texas at home. It's going to be kind of hard to recover from that. So, filling in some big shoes at USC, freshman walk-on, that's a lot of pressure. But he handled it well, won the game for them, and they keep on moving 3-0. Fight on.
Next game we're going to look at, Mississippi State, LSU. I don't think anybody saw the outcome of this game coming.
Poor Ed Orgeron. I mean, he gets his first year as the LSU head coach, first chance to really, get the ball rolling as we go into SEC play, get that first win in the SEC under his belt, and I mean, they were just shellacked. Absolutely just blindsided by Mississippi State. This happened a couple years ago when LSU was, I believe, ranked close to the top 10, and Mississippi State ran right through them. A lot of just questions that need to be answered. LSU's offense was really going to struggle this year, and all those offensive weaknesses were kind of pointed out this game, and Mississippi State exploited them. Yeah,
I mean, it took until the second quarter, I'm looking here at the box score, for Mississippi State to get on the board, for anybody to get on the board, and LSU was able to trade some blows with them about through halfway of the second quarter, and then Mississippi State put up 10 to go into the halftime with a lead of 17-7, and then just did not look back. So really impressive win on the road for them. This was a night game.
It was a night game.
In LSU's Death Valley Stadium, a really impressive performance for the Bulldogs. They're ranked now. I believe they're
17?
in the top. Yeah, they're in the top 20.
And this is just one of 3 really hard games they have coming up the rest of their schedule. Nick Fitzgerald, fantastic play, dual threat quarterback. We've heard about him in the preseason. He really rose to the occasion here. A really breakout performance for him, and the running game is on point. 146 yards from Harris Williams. Sets up a great matchup against Georgia. Really stout defense for the Bulldogs. So Bulldogs matchup going up next week. Yeah. Big time performance.
For sure. Good. Next game that we're going to look at, Vanderbilt, Kansas State. This final was Vandy 14, K-State 7. It was a home game for the Commodores. They're now 3-0. They got Big Bad Bama next week. You think the Commodores have a chance?
Somebody in the stands actually had a sign that says, "We want Bama." They probably are going to regret that after next week, but probably one of the biggest wins Vanderbilt's had in their recent history at home, to say the least. I mean, Kansas State, a ranked team, 18th in the country. Bill Snyder, great coach. Kyle Shermer for Vanderbilt, impressive performance, 14 for 23, 205 yards. And, a defensive battle is what Vanderbilt kind of prides himself on, and that's the way they got it done. So that's the kind of mentality they're going to have going into next week's Bama game.
Yeah, I mean, Vanderbilt's kind of been the bottom of the SEC for several years and never really been seen as a threat. I don't think Alabama's worried about this game that's coming up, but I do think that it makes some teams step back and take them seriously. I think what's even more important to note now is that the Commodores have a better overall record than the Gamecocks. So let's not forget about that after they lost to the Wildcats.
SEC East. They have a chance.
Yeah, they do.
They really do.
I mean,
at this point.
I think that they could potentially break out and get a SEC East Division crown. So we'll just have to see. Next game we're going to look at, this one. Crazy ending. Florida, Tennessee. A Hail Mary, and it kind of reminds me of Tennessee last year a little bit.
You would have never thought. I mean, it was third quarter. It was 6-3 Florida.
Yeah.
Florida hadn't even had an offensive touchdown yet, and they blow it up with 20 points and 17 points in the fourth quarter for Florida and Tennessee. You know, heartbreaker for Butch Jones and Tennessee, but all that magic they had last year, just deja vu all over again. This time they were on the wrong side of it.
And a lot of people are actually, Clay Travis included for Fox Sports, is calling for Butch Jones's firing after this game. I don't know. I think that might be a little bit too premature. But, yeah, Tennessee definitely got a taste of their own medicine after that game.
I think he's really happy that he got that win against Georgia Tech the very first game of the year, because if he's 1-2 going into the fourth week of the year, yeah, you may be having to call for his firing at that point. But Florida just lucky to escape this game. I mean, it's, really not a good performance for both teams, but Florida just happened to come out on top.
And the game was at home in the Swamp, so I feel like that kind of helped, especially once it got into, well, it didn't get into overtime, but once it got close in the fourth quarter, the crowd became a factor again, and that's kind of what contributed to their win. But, yeah, an amazing play.
Could play a part in the SEC East battle towards the end of the year, that one game. So you never
Definitely.
know.
Go ahead. Last game that we're going to touch on, we've already looked at it a little bit, Clemson, Louisville. Overall, an extremely solid performance by Clemson. Really not a lot. I did hear today, though, that Dabo said that he felt like the Louisville game was the worst that they had played defensively all year. Now,
which is incredible to think about.
You could argue that, because they're playing the reigning Heisman Trophy winner, it should have been the worst defensive game that they played all year. They only gave up 21 points. 14 of those were late in the game in the fourth quarter when the second string and third string were out there. So I understand where he's coming from. But at the same time, it was great to see them get a stop at the very end of the game. The first string guys were extremely excited for the second and third string players. So, I mean, I feel like overall it was extremely impressive offensively with Kelly Bryant. The defense did a great job through three quarters, and special teams made plays when they needed to make plays, and overall it was a pretty sound performance.
They just really controlled the tempo. I mean, from the very beginning of the game, it looked like it was going to be one of those shootouts like we had last year. Lamar was able to move the ball down the field.
A little bit.
There was that huge call early, I think it was midway through the first quarter, where Lamar had like a 50-yard run down the field, and it was called back because like a shot block.
Shot block, yes.
Something like that. It was called back, and that really just changed the landscape of the rest of the game. I mean, Clemson just controlled it the rest of the way. Out of nowhere, Travis Etienne, the true freshman running back, breaks one for 81 yards down the field. I mean, that just shows the depth that Clemson has rushing-wise. They've got 5 guys they can rely on, including Kelly Bryant.
Yeah,
as a rushing attack.
And I feel like he's more of a threat running the ball than Deshaun was. I mean,
Absolutely.
He is a little bit more nimble. He's not Deshaun level of shifty, but he makes you stay honest and making sure that he is contained within the pocket, because if he gets around to the perimeter or gets upfield, it's over. And then if you try and contain him on the perimeter, he can just loft it over your head to one of his guys downfield.
And I heard somebody today that they were comparing Deshaun and Kelly in the way they ran. Deshaun was more of a quarterback running style. Kelly really runs like a wide receiver or a running back, just the way that they run through defenses. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's shown that they've really utilized his ability to run down the field, and they're going to keep doing it going forward. That's something Dabo really likes about him. That's kind of why he chose him as the starter.
Yeah. Well, that was the Week 3 summary. We're going to go ahead and jump into 5 good questions. Let me grab my trusty flag here. How are we going to do it this week? Do you want to ask the questions? Do you want me to ask the questions?
We can split them if you want. We both came up with questions, so we can do whatever you want. You want to do 3 and 3?
That's fine with me.
Okay.
I guess I'll start.
All right.
And, all right, we'll go with that. First question for me, is Coach O on the hot seat after the loss at home to Mississippi State?
You know, you talked about this earlier with Herman after the first loss. I don't think it's quite yet. I mean, it was a big loss. Let's go with that. But it could have been a fluke if LSU starts to play well towards the end of the year and they really get something going. You could look back and just say it was just a tough week against a tough opponent. A couple more losses like this, especially in the SEC, that's kind of down this year. Yeah, I would say it, but I wouldn't say right now he's on the hot seat.
I'd have to agree with you. I think it's a little bit too early. It's too early in the season. We'll just have to see how the rest of the year plays out. They do have a lot of questions, though, after that kind of performance at home. There's a lot of issues right now for LSU. But I think Coach O will be able to get it figured out. Next question is expecting Clemson to three-peat after their win against Louisville and all the issues that Florida State is dealing with. Is expecting Clemson to three-peat for the college football playoff unreasonable?
Absolutely not. I mean, at this point, Clemson-Alabama is an inevitable the third matchup is kind of an inevitable.
Really? So you'd pick Alabama right now?
I would go Clemson-Alabama.
That is interesting.
I mean, there are teams that are on the rise, creating a bunch of talk and a bunch of murmur about it, but at this point, I mean, Clemson, Alabama just looks like it's bound to happen.
I think it's more. I'm going to throw the flag on the fact that you're picking Alabama because I think it's way more than murmur. You've got teams right now like Oklahoma State, Penn State that's shut out 2 teams. You've got teams, I feel like, from every conference that have a legitimate chance right now. I mean, you've got Oklahoma out of the Big Ten. You got Oklahoma State.
Big 12, yep.
Yeah, Big 12. And I think somebody on the Pac or somebody out in the Pac-12, I think, may creep in. We'll just have to see. But I don't think that picking Alabama is as safe a pick anymore.
You think it's more of a safe pick to pick Clemson to go to the playoff than Alabama?
Right now, yes. Based off of the games that we've seen so far, we're only in week 3, but based off of the last 2 games I've seen from Clemson, I'd feel much more comfortable picking them than picking an Alabama team that beat Fresno State and Colorado State.
True, they did do pretty well against Florida State. Now, granted, Florida State did miss Francois.
How good does that win look anymore?
A third of that game, yes, but I think it's even more surprising the fact that we're saying Clemson's even going to make the playoff, let alone be the number 1 team in the country at this point. This far into the season. I mean, beginning of the year, kind of on the outside looking in. I didn't even have them in. I guess you may have. You had Florida State, I believe.
Yeah, I think I had Florida State for the ACC, but how quickly the college football landscape can change.
And how quickly it will change going forward.
Last question, really quick here. Do you consider Saturday's game against USC to be a moral win for Texas or an empty one?
I would say it's a moral win for Texas standards. They might not think so. I think for Herman, it absolutely is a moral win.
I'm going to have to agree. I feel like with Texas and Herman's so young, he's so new there, and he's trying to get his guys to buy into the program. You remember Dabo. I mean, he beat South Carolina when he was an interim head coach his first year. And I think that's part of the reason that he stayed on and then lost to them 5 years in a row. Mm-hmm. And, yes, there was a lot of grumbling, but we didn't lose hope, and obviously that the rivalry streak is turned around in our favor. But I feel like, yes, it's definitely a moral win. Yeah, you can look at it, and on paper it's a loss. I mean, a loss is a loss. But to go into USC at a night game, huge environment, to contend, to make it to the double overtime, I felt like was a huge win for Herman and his coaching staff. So I'd have to
better because if they would have won, people would have said Texas is back, and then they could have just fallen off the face of the earth again at the end of the year. So.
Yeah, very true. All right, your turn to ask some questions now.
All right, I got 3 for you right here. After Saturday's performance against Clemson, not exactly up to par, could Lamar Jackson still win the Heisman Trophy?
No, I don't think he can. I think after that kind of performance at home, I know that Clemson's arguably the best defense in the country, but you have to show up in big games, especially when they're at home. If he had been traveling to Clemson, that's a little bit more understandable. But from my point of view, it's really how you perform in those big games, especially within your own division, that really can define your season. And so, no, I don't think Lamar has a chance.
I'll throw the flag. I like the part you said about the big game thing, but Lamar really just won the Heisman based off stats last year. A team that finished 9-4.
Yeah.
It didn't even matter that his team was losing. They still were going to hand him the Heisman just based off the fact he was breaking records left and right. So I think he still has a chance. He's going to need a lot more help. You know, his offensive line and his wide receivers need to catch the ball and actually protect him well, but I still think he can win it. I don't think he will, but I think there's still a possibility.
Okay.
Second question, does Iowa upset Penn State like they did against Michigan last year?
No.
And change the landscape
Not
of the Big Ten?
even a chance. Penn State has shut out 2 opponents so far this year. I mean, I've seen nothing from the Nittany Lions that would make me think that there's even an inkling of inconsistency so far. They've been one of the most consistent teams so far this year. I got Penn State winning that game in a landslide.
Really?
Really? You think Iowa State's going to win that game?
Iowa. I don't think Iowa will beat them, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than people think. It's at Iowa. A tough game for Michigan last year. It was kind of one they didn't really expect to see happen. Penn State, they did struggle a little bit with Pitt. Their offense wasn't really clicking like it usually was.
They still beat them 33-14.
It was 33-14. It was a little bit close, towards the second half.
If it's within 3 touchdowns, I think that's a
Iowa prized themselves on being great defensively. So I could see it being close. Now, I think Penn State will still win. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Iowa keeps it close maybe towards the end. Penn State might.
I don't know if that's going out on a limb as much as it is just insanity. But go ahead, hit me with that last question.
And then the third question, Deshaun Watson was replying to some comments about Kelly Bryant, rising to the occasion and, even surpassing him possibly.
Yep.
Do you think Kelly Bryant could be better than Deshaun Watson by the end of his Clemson career?
I think he can be. I think he can accomplish the same things that Deshaun accomplished here. I don't know if he will, but I think he can. I think he has the support in place to do that. I think he has the talent around him. He has the coaching staff. He has access to one of the nicest facilities, one of the most updated facilities in the country. And I think he has the talent, and I think he has the drive. Notice watching his pressers, he's much more open and much more engaged with the media than Deshaun was. Deshaun was always much more reserved. Not necessarily as a bad thing, but that's just
personality.
Yeah, Deshaun was always more quiet and to himself. But Kelly Bryant really embraces that spotlight. Now, it's tough because you don't want that spotlight to go to your head, but I really think that Kelly Bryant appreciates the moment and his surroundings and all. I mean, I really think that Kelly understands the gravity of the situation. So I think he could be better than Deshaun in the
I'll
end.
agree with you on that. I think really what we're seeing is Kelly Bryant really developing into a true quarterback. Last year he was really utilized as just a running quarterback, and that was his primary tool was to run the ball. Now that he's developed a throwing attack and that he's, we're seeing that he might even be better than Deshaun running-wise.
Yep.
I really think he could be. I mean, all the tools are there and all the surrounding pieces are there. And honestly, watching him, I'm feeling more comfortable the first part of the year this year than I did last year with Deshaun.
So, because last year we didn't start out so strong, and this year we've really come out of the gate.
Not turn the ball over, and that is one
that's
huge
critical.
thing about
Not
Kelly
turning the
Bryant.
ball over, Louisville night game. That's pretty.
And
impressive.
you saw what it leads to. So I think he really could be better than Deshaun, which is saying something.
Maybe so.
The legacy he left.
All right, we'll go ahead and get into some news. I saw an article on CBS Sports, and it was talking about how Dan Mullen ought to start looking at other coaching jobs around the country. What do you make of that?
It's not something you want to see right now, especially after he just got a signature win against LSU.
I
can see where they were coming at, saying, look at a couple years ago with Dak Prescott, they were number one in the country for 5
He's churned out quarterbacks.
Oh, my gosh.
His ability to coach up quarterbacks is unlike anybody's, I think, in the country right now.
Fitzgerald is getting national attention as one of the best dual-threat quarterbacks out there. I guess you could say, looking at the coaching layout right now, there could be some better jobs out there for him. But what he's got going at Mississippi State right now, they love him there. He's pretty much locked up there for as long as he wants to be. They'll probably pay him well. I don't think he has any reason to leave right now in the SEC.
No, I mean, he's in, arguably the most, I wouldn't say it's the best conference right now, but it has the most pageantry. And it's obviously it's a sought-after place to coach. Yep. Any school in the SEC is a sought-after school to coach. But the article does start out with the quote that Dan Mullen is the hottest coach in America. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, but I definitely think that what he's got going on at Mississippi State is something that he has the ability to replicate at other schools.
Yeah.
Now, how much of that coaching staff from Mississippi State he could bring with him remains to be seen. But I don't think Dan Mullen really, if he's smart, would be looking for other jobs right about now.
I mean, if he's getting severely underpaid, I could see that maybe, and if something opens up, like maybe the Notre Dame job, if Brian Kelly ends up leaving, then maybe
win an SEC championship. I mean, I know they were ranked what, number 1 for 5 weeks in like 2014, and they had that brief stint there with Ole Miss. But until you win an SEC championship or you're in the college football playoff.
He's a good coach. He develops a lot more than what they probably have down there in Mississippi State, but you need to see a little more before we start talking about that, I think.
Next topic we're going to touch on is Wyoming's Josh Allen, guy that had a lot of draft potential at the beginning of the year. He was hyped up, and he just continues to plummet.
Maybe just too much hype at this point. Maybe it was just too much for the young man to handle. I mean, he was getting the Carson Wentz treatment.
Think he was paying attention too much to the noise?
Gotta be. I mean, they're probably asking him every question at the Wyoming pressers about this.
True.
But look at his stats against Power 5 opponents. I think he's got like 8 picks to 1 touchdown. I mean, it's just not even what you want to see. Basically, the only good thing you can say about him now is that he's 6'5" and he can throw the ball down the field. And that's basically what NFL draft player people look at, but. There's just no excuses.
Played Oregon. We went 9 for 24. 64 yards. He had a 2-interception performance against Iowa when they opened up the season with a 24-3 loss. I think he has the ability. He just, for whatever reason right now, he's just in a rut. And until he figures out how to get out of that rut, I think his draft stock is just going to continue to decline.
I guess you could assume if he gets a better offensive line and better receivers, but going 9 for 24, you can't have there's not 15 drops.
No.
They're just bad throws.
No, he's just not in a rhythm right now for whatever reason.
At this point, maybe taking the pressure off him a little bit will make him rise back to the occasion like he needed to be doing. Maybe he'll he can only go up from here at this point, so we'll see how he does.
Last topic we want to touch on really quickly, looking at Nebraska. They played Northern Illinois, paid the school like $850,000 to come play, lost the game, and the Nebraska athletic director had some critical comments of Mike Riley, the head coach at the Cornhuskers, after the game, but overall his record is 16-13, which is pretty
average.
Pretty average, for Nebraska. Yeah. I mean, they've had, I think I saw a sold out game for like the last, their crowd has been sold out
For decades, right?
Yeah, that has sold out every home game the past 55 years. That is incredible.
That's an incredible
And this is the second 1-2 start for them in the last 3 years. So, yeah, the Cornhusker fans are hungry for, frankly, a better team. I don't know if Mike Riley's the guy that's going to get them back to where they want to be, but this sure makes the firing of Bo Pelini back in 2014 when he was 67-27 overall.
And this was after a 9-3 season.
Yeah.
In 2014. So I mean, I guess the AD is just scratching his head right now, like, what were we doing back then?
I'm not sure.
9-3, probably just getting a little bit too greedy at that point, firing someone.
Do you think Mike Riley lasts the season at Nebraska? If they're already, if there's already talk about this, if they don't get past 8 wins, I think he's gone.
And the conference is hard. I mean, the schedule going forward is difficult. I know they're going to play some of the weaker teams in the Big Ten, so it's going to be a little bit easier than than it usually would be. But I don't know. You can't lose to Northern Illinois. Now, maybe Northern Illinois a couple of years ago would have been a little better, but yeah, 16-13 in Nebraska. That's too high of standards to live up to that.
Well, now we'll go in briefly and look at our updated college football playoff teams. Let's start with you. Who do you have in your top 4?
Right now, I started out the season. I mean, I kept 3 of my teams that I had, but I've jumbled them around a little bit. I got Clemson as the number 1 team in the country right now. Unbiased, just the way I've seen them play, offense, defense, special teams. They have the best combination of all 3, and I've been super impressed so far. Alabama, I'll keep it 2. They've been a little bit disappointing the last couple of weeks. Colorado State, they were a little shaky on defense. They had a lot of injuries, but they're still Alabama. They're still probably going to roll through the SEC. 3rd, I got Oklahoma State. I know everyone loves Oklahoma. They've fallen in love with them. But the offense right now is just too good at Oklahoma State. I think Mason Rudolph is just too good of a quarterback, and I think they're going to outdo Oklahoma. And then I got Washington at 4. USC's been a little bit underwhelming so far. I still like Jake Browning at quarterback. Miles Gaskin is a running back. The defense needs to get a little bit better, but I think they can roll through the Pac-12 and get to the college football championship.
So you have what conference do you have out? You have Big Ten?
Big Ten out, I believe.
Interesting.
I think Penn State's going to slip up. Their schedule's extremely difficult.
It is. Now, for me, I have Clemson at 1. I think that their defense is the best in the country. They've played exceptionally well on the road at Louisville, at home against Auburn. I think defense wins championships. Offense gets you to championships. They've proved now that they have the offense, but their defense is next level. So I got Clemson at 1. For me, 2, I got Penn State. Okay. They've been dominant on defense. I know their offense, and they have a tough schedule, but their defense has been dominant. 2 shutouts so far this season. Now, granted, they weren't against premier opponents, but it's still impressive nonetheless to get an actual shutout. So that's why I value defense so much. That's why I got Penn State number 2. Number 3, I got the Cowboys. Oklahoma State. Consistently dominant. That's what they are. Their offense is out of this world.
They remind me of Baylor.
And I think they have a good shot right now to make it to make it to the playoff. And this is the first year now that we'll have a Big 12 championship game, won't it? So that could be huge towards the end of the year.
Which could be good and bad for them.
Could be. We'll have to see. Number 4 for me, I got to slip in that SEC, Alabama. Yeah. I almost didn't do it.
4.
I almost didn't do it. But Alabama for me, they're unproven. I know they're Alabama, but they're unproven. They've played Fresno State and they played Colorado State. After opening against FSU, a win that doesn't look good anymore, you could argue that FSU won't even have a chance to contend in their own division. So for me, I just haven't seen them yet. I haven't really seen them play enough to feel like they're better than a team like Oklahoma State or Penn State or Clemson, who I've seen take care of some pretty marquee games. That's just my personal opinion on Alabama. I think they're a great team. They'll be in the playoff, but I don't think right now that they're worthy of being above those teams.
I will say in years past, Bama was battle-tested. They played tough SEC opponents all year long. This year is a lot different. LSU, the team we thought that would challenge them, not the same team. Auburn already has a loss.
Yeah.
They're not going to have many strong opponents. If they slip up, it's hard to believe, but you could even see Alabama, their strength of schedule-wise, if they slip up once, completely left out of the picture.
Well, that transitions into our final topic, which is the Week 4 preview. Speaking of Alabama, they play Vanderbilt, who is also 3-0. It's a 3:30 game on CBS. Do you think they trip up?
They're 18.5-point favorites. That's a little bit too much. I think Vanderbilt's too good on defense for that. Alabama's forced 6 turnovers. They were still banged up on defense, so I think that opens the door for Vanderbilt. It still is Alabama versus Vanderbilt, and it still is we're playing college football here, so I'm going to give the nod to Alabama on the road. But Vanderbilt, 3-0 start. They just had a marquee win over Kansas State.
I think one thing that people are not looking at with Vanderbilt, they are allowing 4 points a game.
That is
the most that they've allowed in one game is 7. They've allowed 6, 0, and 7. I think Vanderbilt's defense is good. I don't think
very good.
I don't think that's a fluke. I think that Vanderbilt's defense could be the best in the SEC right now. Could be.
It's arguable.
So I think that Alabama. This game is it at Alabama or is it?
It is at Vanderbilt.
It's at Vanderbilt,
which is the biggest game they've had in years.
I'm going upset. I am going Commodores over the Crimson Tide. I think I may, but I'm thinking that it could be like South Carolina that year that they hosted Bama. I think back in 2010 or 2012. It might have been 2012, and they beat them at home. South Carolina beat them at home, and Columbia shattered into 1,000 pieces because everybody lost their minds. But I think the Commodores are going to beat the Crimson Tide.
If you were able to pull that upset pick off, I may just let you do the show by yourself the rest of the year. I don't even need to be
I might just retire. That might be the last pick I ever make. We'll look at the next game, though. TCU, the Horned Frogs, against Oklahoma State. This figures to be a huge game for the Big 12.
Very big. And early in the year, you wouldn't think so. TCU still kind of rebuilding after last year's 6-6 campaign. Oklahoma State, we've seen the flashy offense, but TCU has a pretty impressive defense. Their defensive line's been stout. Held Arkansas to 7 points.
Yeah. What's amazing, though, both of these teams are averaging 50 points a game. Both of these teams are giving up less than 17 points a game.
And they both have great quarterbacks and great coaching.
This is going to be a shootout.
It's going to be a very good game. You could see it. I mean, even though TCU's defense is good, you still could see it in the 40s.
Yeah.
I'm going to go Oklahoma State just because in the preseason I've predicted them. I think they have the best offense in the country.
Yeah.
It'll be just too overwhelming for TCU.
I think that it'll come down to midway through third quarter, fourth quarter, and Oklahoma State will finally pull away. But I think the Horned Frogs give them a good run for their money.
They've had a track record of being a great team, and Gary Patterson always gets them ready to go. So
First conference game for both of these teams. That's a huge conference opener.
Very big start.
Mississippi State at Georgia, I believe.
Georgia.
Are they between?
Yes,
they're between the hedges. You could argue that Mississippi State doesn't deserve to be in the top 20. They did whoop up on LSU last week, but Georgia now at number 11, they could get a pretty significant win against Mississippi State, knock them back out of the top 25. But this could put Georgia in the top 10.
Like I was saying with Bama, I mean, there's very little chances now to get marquee wins in the SEC. It's just plain and simple. I find it kind of alarming that this is the first ever meeting between the two as top 25 teams. They've never met in their long history as top 25 teams.
And you know what's amazing? Mississippi State is favored to win this game.
Are you serious?
Yes, according to ESPN's matchup predictor, you know how much I love those
the
statistics.
FBI. The FBI has Ohio State number 2, so let's just take that with a grain of salt.
But looking at this, yes, Mississippi State ranked below Georgia on the road is favored to win that game.
That's kind of just disrespectful.
Wild,
to Georgia
isn't
at that point.
It is, isn't it?
I mean, I guess you could look at the quarterback matchup. Fitzgerald's probably the better quarterback for Mississippi State. I don't know. I mean, they did whoop up on LSU.
I'm going Mississippi State.
I'm going to go Georgia just because I think the running attack's going to be too much, and Georgia's defense is a little bit too good.
Milk the clock.
And it's at home. I think Georgia's going to show up and crank into the top 10 for the Bulldogs.
Oh, we'll have to see.
The Georgia Bulldogs, that is.
Next game, we're looking over at the Pac-12, Washington versus Colorado. This is is it a night game?
I don't know.
10 p.m. It is. It's Pac-12 after dark.
There you go, West Coast. Rematch of last year's Pac-12 championship game. Colorado not ranked this time around, but they're still impressive. Both teams are 3-0.
3-0.
Washington got the best of them last year.
Yep.
But Washington's defense, they're talking about how they're really, really worried about dual threat quarterback Steven Mathis for Colorado. I mean, it could be an interesting matchup. Last year I think Colorado's quarterback got hurt. That's why Washington kind of pulled away. But it'll be interesting.
Yeah, but neither of these teams have really played anybody yet, and so I know Colorado's 3-0 and they've looked impressive, but they've played Colorado State, Texas State, and UNCO. I'm not even sure who that is.
Northern Colorado, I think.
Maybe. I have no idea. But I'm going to go Huskies. I think it's a safe pick here, and I think Washington has too much to lose in this game.
I'll go Washington, just too much offense. Colorado, they were great last year, the darlings of college football. Lost a little bit too much. They might put up a fight since I guess it's at Colorado, I believe.
It is at Colorado.
Okay, so that might play a factor. I still think Jake Browning's going to be too much, too experienced. So I'll go Washington.
Final game. Most important game of the week, right? We've got our Clemson Tigers back at number 2 in the AP poll, hosting the Boston College Eagles. BC has a 1.5% chance to win this game.
I might be a little bit too generous, too.
Is that too generous, do you think?
Boston College looked good for 3 quarters against Notre Dame last week. I was a little bit impressed. Their defense has been good in years past. Their offense still is just absolutely abysmal. They just can't score, plain and simple.
They lost to Notre Dame 49-20.
They did. It was close through about 3 quarters. Notre Dame pulled away at the very end, though.
Defense. 49 to Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I think Kelly Bryant's. I think
Oh, I would say so. They're definitely more talented. Yeah.
I feel like Ryan's going to be able to light up the scoreboard against BC's defense. And I don't think that BC has the offense to really challenge Clemson's defense.
Yeah.
And I think Venables will have a great scheme prepared, and he's going to be able to come in with different blitzes and packages. So I think that Clemson's going to be able to get it.
Yeah, BC, they lost a linebacker. They have one linebacker that's projected like top 10 in the NFL draft, but it's going to take a lot more than just him. I'm going to go Clemson, probably in a landslide. It's going to be a big win for them.